Hey guys, Video Slack here. Now, I just made a video a moment ago and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I hope I didn't piss anybody off with it because I know how sensitive people can get sometimes. But let's see. And it looks like there's another reply I just got, but I'll have to answer that here after I make this video. Okay, so, there's many times I have seen all of these guys, worrying about, trying to look good and make a good impression. And those are understandable things. But I think we've gone to a time period or where I should say, a lot of guys are just so out under pressure and they just seem to want to act like they're better than all of the other guys that they're competing with. And I kind of get that sometimes these guys are just living their competitive lifestyle. And so that's just kind of how they do things sometimes. But the problem is that I sometimes think that there are many cases when it just kind of gets in the way of just enjoying yourself and just enjoying life, enjoying your wife, enjoying your kids. When you sometimes are working 16-hour days, trying to compete and outwork some of the other guys while at your workplace and so on. And at the same time, trying to keep your pretty little, trophy wife around to kind of try to justify your ego to all the people around you, etc. And at the same time, I will see like just regular families of people enjoying themselves, living minimal income, etc. With smiles on their faces. They don't have a worry in the world. And so sometimes I just think, why can't this really competitive guy be at least a little bit more like the people over here who are happy, even though they don't really have as much money, etc. And again, we've gone to a period where we don't really have to survive like we used to. Surviving isn't like it used to be. And we can take the time nowadays to do other things other than just simply surviving like our ancestors used to. And that's, I think, where sometimes the ego comes in sometimes, is that now we are able to make the time for and accomplish these other things. And we don't have to focus so much on making kids, being a father, and everything, and that, and also just the dream of trying to become famous, etc., that I think has been pushed among younger adults nowadays versus trying to do other things like work honestly. And teamwork has turned into, it's not anymore of just, working with your coworkers and being a team player. And it kind of still is like that, but every time I've worked in a workplace that is competitive, I feel like my coworkers are like the enemy sometimes. It's like I'm working against them to outwork them and everything. You know what I mean? And it's just so weird when I go to a competitive workplace that is really strict and everything. It's like I not only have to try to work and compete with my coworkers, but I'm also having to look out for them because if I even show one shed of weakness, boom, it's like next thing you know, they're bullying me. Next thing you know, they're throwing me under the bus, etc. And then I'm out the door, even if I'm trying to be a hard worker. It's like that's it. And so sometimes I just think, why has it turned into something like this? Where even if I'm trying to be a team player and be nice to my coworkers, it's like, no, we would rather be try to be better than you than to actually honestly work with you and be a team player as well. And try to justify our egos by getting trophy wives and trying to show them off, etc., and getting Ferraris, etc. and then turn around and act like, oh, everybody can be rich like us, and that they're just too lazy, etc. Even though that's not really how it works. Not everybody in a country can actually be rich. But moving on from that. And this is just a couple of guys and me talking here who have laid down a couple comments. Some of them are kind of long, so just brace with me. And the first one here says, the truth is that you don't have to be good looking as a guy, but as a man, you have to bring something of value to her in order to have sex with her. It might be your good looks or something else. Either way, you have to pay. And this is probably the first non-ridiculous comment I've actually seen in a long time when it refers to relationships with women and men, at least. 1 second. I think I'm going to have to drink some water here. God damn. I'm getting really tired of being sick, guys. I've been sick for almost fucking 3 weeks now. But anyway. So I replied back to him. Women think about sex as much as men do, and depending on your attitude and how fun you are to be around, they'll judge if you're good in bed or not. But sadly, due to real life reality, in many cases, we do have to pay one way or another, agreed. Especially when you're a guy who has the money. They will expect you to pay more so. By the way, I can't tell you how many fuddly looking women I see get hit on at my workplace for sex, lots of laughs. And the reason why I said that last part is because at the beginning he said the truth is you don't have to be good looking as a guy. And I'm just like thinking, yeah, what was he talking about? I mean, just as a guy. I mean, I've seen plenty of times when, ugly women are getting hit on, like plenty of times. I mean, it might not be getting hit on by every guy in the room, but like they are still getting hit on, and it can get sex as well. But moving on from that. And this another person here that comes down says it's not the same thing. Yes, you can get the argument. It's the same thing. Guys want a better looking partner for the ego, just like people would rather drive a 2020 car model than a 1997 model. They can both give theoretically, but it's also better to drive a 2020 model. And I replied back to him. By the way, sorry for my sickness. Jesus Christ. I can barely even speak here. Jeez. Trying to clear my damn throat for you guys. But I said back to him, a lot of richer guys on dating sites tend to go after younger girls. And the younger they are, the more guys they tend to get going after them because they are easier to take advantage of versus more experienced older women in her 30s. I've met guys that like that before, while I haven't met one that's been mean to me yet. But I always tend to see them having their model girlfriend a little bit in front of them, not only for ego, but to show them off, like their trophy, like they're his property. And I'm not sure why you made that comparison with the cars, because many people would love the chance to drive some of the older sports cars that are very valuable, like my father's 1969 Chevy Super Sport, which is actually a muscle car. But that even younger guys around drool over my father's car every single time he brings it to a car show. It just depends on if it's a classic car or not. And he replies back. He says, guys would rather drive the newer models because it looks nicer and more appealing, like a status symbol. Yes, classic cars and a select few are absolutely beautiful, and renovations and collecting them is considered an expensive hobby. I'm just saying an average girl and a really hot girl are not the same even though sex is still going to feel pleasurable. The modeling industry discriminates against average looking women. Jesus Christ. Yeah, this is definitely my last video today. My sickness is ugh. And I replied back to him, they do discriminate against them, but the models that are in magazines and such get digitally modified pics after they're taken and sometimes don't even look like the same person. Yes, it is an expensive hobby, but if you buy them like my uncle did before he died a few years ago, he had all these really rare cars and classics, and some of them I got to be in, but not many. They really do suck with bumps on the road, due to traction and all that. Lots of laughs, but he'd keep them for decades till they get really high in price and sell them. For him, it wasn't just a hobby, it was an investment. But if you drive them too much, it brings down their value for a worn vehicle. I'll have to edit this, and you lose out on the investment if you wear down these vehicles over time. Whereas this vehicle could potentially become like almost $1 million in the future, or even $100,000 in the future, 3 decades from now. If you wear down this vehicle, it's maybe at best going to be $10,000 to $5,000 in the future. So good luck. That's the reason why sometimes you'll see Mercedes for $10,000, is because they're worn down. So don't buy them. But anyway, moving on from that. Where cars can go up in value for women, it seems to go the other way around when it comes to attraction. That is, the older that women get, the less that men want them. So again, I just don't really agree with that comparison, because vehicles actually go up in value. A lot of men want these cars. And it actually is also a status symbol when you buy these cars, because when you buy the classic vehicles and such, like there's some vehicles out there that are over $10 million in value. And buying these cars is actually more of a status symbol than actually buying the newer ones. That is, unless you're trying to buy something like a Bugatti, of course, or something that's really expensive like that. Or something like an Enzo Ferrari, or some kind of car that you have to be a part of a group of to buy. You can't just have the money; you have to be part of the group as well. And so those cars are status symbols when it comes to stuff like that. But yeah, don't compare cars with women, please. And also, the thing is, in America, women aren't really property. And I always think it always kind of makes me laugh every time a guy talks about women in relationships like they're supposed to be our property. But there's a reason why it's not like that anymore. And to be frank, I don't really care to have a woman as like my property. And I know the reason why guys think it would fix a lot of issues is because it would keep them from leaving them, because they're very insecure about women leaving them and such and so on. They kind of want to be controlling over them. But the thing is, women are also human beings. And if we did something like that, especially nowadays, like, it would only hurt them. And it would even also hurt our children as well. And also, when it comes to your money, and if it was so, like, if women didn't have the right to, let's say, a percentage of the money when we broke up with them, what that would do is that it would also hurt them as well, because then they would just be left with nothing. What kind of person would just want to hurt their soulmate that they've been with for a few years like that? So, and that's just another thing. And because back in the day, women used to not even be able to own property and such. And so if we were going to go back to women being our property, what would happen is that if, let's say, your brother died, you would have to marry his wife, is what would happen. And if you did not marry his wife because she's not able to own property, that would be seen as your responsibility to take action and marry her because she's not able to own anything. And so if you didn't marry her, you would be looked as a jackass and you would get stoned, as they used to say. And so I think that people just really need to look into what it actually used to be like when we used to treat women like our property and such, and they used to not make any decisions, etc. Because to me, it just sounds like a really shitty lifestyle. And even at the time, I don't think it was really working out sometimes. And especially nowadays, it just will not work out. But as far as, guys always trying to compete and act like they're better than each other, I think that a lot of people are just taking advantage of what we have nowadays. It's very easy to, or should I say more so easy to get into a career nowadays than it used to, versus what, our grandparents and even some of our parents used to go through when they were younger. Just think, what would happen if, let's say, we brought back the draft? Well, what would happen is that thousands and thousands, if not millions of people would be drafted into war, and then they would miss that opportunity to get an education, get into a career, get their trophy wife, etc. And nowadays, I think a lot of guys just treat this like it's candy, like getting a career and everything and getting a job and becoming rich is almost like candy nowadays. And that we need all of this shit to survive, even though we don't actually need all this shit to survive. But, they just act like we all need a Ferrari and $1 million to survive nowadays. And we all have to be really competitive and act like we're better than everybody else to survive, etc. Because that's the only real goal that we have nowadays, because everything else to them and their lifestyle has become very simple and accessible. So that's the only real challenge now that we have left, or at least for some guys out there, is becoming the best at something or becoming the best guy, because we don't really survive like we used to, is a thing. And I think that's what it really is nowadays and boils down to it. But what I think a lot of these guys don't realize sometimes is, how much opportunity that they have versus many other people. And I think that they have lost sight of reality as a thing. And with that being said, I will just end this video. Not that there isn't more that I could say about this, but I think I'll just stop right there. But if you guys want to talk more about this, you guys can go ahead and lay down a comment, etc. And I'll see you guys in later. Bye.